Yeah, thank you, Maria. It is, of course, the most exciting time of any Pro Tour. It's when we're seated and ready to draft, Paul. We get to crack some packs. And this time, we are going to be following along with Nathan Steuer, 8-0 overnight in his comeback Pro Tour and looking to put a real exclamation mark on it here early, Paul. A 2-1 or a 3-0 here puts him in really good position for a top 8.
Yeah, I mean, we already kind of saw what happens when you start out 8-0. That puts you in a really, really good spot to top 8. I mean, even if we just looked at the results over the last couple of years, you kind of have a roughly 50% conversion rate into the top 8. But of course, it starts with draft today. You 3-0, you got lots of chances to lock up that top 8 spot.
And this, of course, is the unknown quantity. This is the one where you don't know what you're going to open in the packs. You know what you've got for standard after that. Take a look at Nathan Steuer at the top of your screen there, and you can take a look around our first feature pod. I'll tell you one name that really stands out here, Paul. Christopher Larson.
Yeah.
Comes over as our Pro Tour champion, and he's still near the top of the standings at 7-1, so that's an interesting storyline to keep our eye on. But for now, Nathan Steuer, 8-0. What can he put together in this draft? Can he get a deck that can propel him to the top 8? I mean, if he comes away with a 3-0, he's in incredibly good position. I mean, really, he would only need to win one more round to make it.
Yeah, I mean,
but even a 2-1 puts him so good.
Of course, yeah. Kind of coming into this, for this event at least, 12 wins is the magic number. If you get 12 wins before the final round of the event, that automatically removes you from the event and locks you into the top 8.
Let's get started. Please pick up the pack labeled A. Remove the cards from the pack, noting that one of them is going to be facing the opposite direction. Lay out 14 cards face down on the table.
You can see this is a call draft from Paul, our judge that's calling this particular draft. Nathan hoping to open something amazing and also with a clear direction.
Of course, yes. There's don't want to start things off with a common unless we see maybe that Potioner's Trove that Chris Larson was so fond of. But let's take a look here.
All right, taking a look. Vibrant Outburst.
Yeah, Vibrant Outburst. There's a Grapple with Death. There's an Artistic Process, which is keeps you a little more open, right? Because it's a monocolored card. You can certainly play it in your Lorehold decks or play it in your Prismari control decks. Vibrant Outburst, of course, the card with more upside, as it's a very efficient card. And then there's Essence Knit Scholar and Grapple with Death, which are both good cards. However, starting the draft off with Witherbloom is often not something that many players want to do, unless you feel like the entire table knows what's up and you're just going to take the underdrafted archetype.
Yeah, Essence and Scholar is definitely a first pick quality card.
Wow.
Whoa, I was not going to say that he was going to take it. I was going to say it's on the quality level, but not necessarily in the archetype that you want. But there is a low to the ground aggressive Witherbloom deck that some players favor because nobody else wants the cards for it.
Absolutely, and Essence Knit Scholar is fantastic. There is an ambitious augmenter here. So, I mean, this card is fantastic, especially the way that you want to draft these Witherbloom decks is typically a little bit more aggressively slanted, and this is one of the best, if not the best, one-mana aggressive creature in the format.
That's right. This one is a game changer when you get it down on one, and you can see he's also pulled Pest, Mascot, and Mindful Biomancer. These are all cards that go in that deck that I just mentioned, and critically, they're cards that other decks don't want. Nobody wants a Pest Mascot unless you're doing the full-on Witherbloom thing. And Mindful Biomancer, I mean, nobody wants that.
Yeah, nobody wants. I don't even know if you necessarily want it in the Witherbloom aggressive decks either.
You do,
it's probably fine,
you have 30
but
seconds.
I think Nathan was just kind of highlighting the cards that he would maybe hope to table based on this start here.
There's another Pest Mascot and also a Leech Collector. Yes. This is interesting. I'm wondering, you know, I'm seeing the trend here of him passing these gold Witherbloom cards and taking the more powerful monocolored ones, maybe hoping to wheel some of these Pest Mascots?
I mean, there's just a good shot, right? Just Witherbloom is not something that is not a color combination that everybody's looking to play, so it's better to just take the monocolored card and move in that direction. Leech Collector are also very, very strong if you can find enough enablers. If you can pick up enough Lumerets to, for example, just gain a bunch of life, and then I've taken 8 damage from this card before, so it can do a lot of work.
And again, in the lower to the ground aggressive version, now that actually adds up.
Right. Is that a Force of Will?
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a bunch of Prismari cards in this pack. Sanar, one of Prismari's strongest uncommons. There's a Force of Will, Pursue the Past, and a Wisdom of Ages. So lots of great blue cards, but a little bit hard to kind of take one of those cards given the start. Snooping Page is an interesting one because we took the Leech Collector. Perhaps you can pivot into a Silver Quill deck if that ends up being available.
Yeah, there just wasn't really anything for Witherbloom there. No green cards to speak of at all, and no mono black cards. So Snooping Page is going to be the card. Maybe a little pivot coming here.
Yeah.
Ooh,
okay.
End of the Hunt.
Yeah, great removal spell here. And this still keeps you a little bit open, right? You took that Snooping Page, you take End of the Hunt.
Another Pest Mascot.
Yeah, it's a premium removal spell here in the pack here. So you take this, and Nathan right now is thinking, okay, I could be Witherbloom, I could be Silver Quill. It's nice to see such a great removal spell here. Pick 5.
So there are 3 Pest Mascot passed from Nathan in this. I mean, if those don't come back, then Nathan knows for sure that somebody else is going to be in Witherbloom.
Of course, yes. And Witherbloom is one of those archetypes where you kind of need to be the only drafter to kind of have it really come together the way that you want. And oftentimes, you are the only Witherbloom drafter. People are drafting Prismari, the aggressive decks, the multicolor Converge decks. So this typically ends up being the archetype that ends up being a little bit more open.
There's Mind Roots, which always tricks me into thinking that it's Grapple with Death.
Shuffle and lay out
right, it's got the exact same mana value. However,
one time it even made it into my deck as a Grapple with Death.
I mean, in the decks you like to draft, it's still probably a fine card.
Yes, it's probably even better actually.
Oh, okay. So that is a pretty late knockout maneuver and a Withering Curse. So Withering Curse, of course, a card with very, very high upside, especially if you can gain life. It just acts as a sweeper type effect. However, as I mentioned before, people who draft the Witherbloom decks typically want to be a little more proactive, and Knockout Maneuver is a fantastic removal spell as well that also really works well with your game plan.
That's right. And, you know, with that pick, it does seem like Nathan has decided, I'm going to go with Witherbloom. I mean, that's another green card to add to already a couple of good green cards. So let's just take a quick look at the type of cards that Nathan may be wanting to pick up. Here's where he's at right now. Boy, that's a nice start. If you're going to go in this color pair, Ambitious Augmenter and Essence Knit Scholar are really good starts. And then things, you know, the End of the Hunt was a nice one, and the Knockout Maneuver as well. So let's take a look at some of the commons that, that Nathan may be thinking, I'd love to see those out of the forthcoming packs. Bogwater, Lumerette, super key. The best way to gain life out of the deck. Grapple with Death and Last Gasp, both really solid removal spells.
Just these are the best removal effects in that color combination, and Lumerette just kind of turns everything on. Taking a look at the uncommons here, you have Luen, Pest Brute Sloth, and Thornfist Striker. A lot of these cards help create pests or are life gain payoffs, and that's kind of, you know, this Witherbloom deck is a synergistic aggressive strategy, and all these cards play very, very well into that deck.
And if you're going to dream big.
Yeah, that's right. We have... Is it Bletch or Bleck? I don't know. Whatever the case may be, you know, the curve of just going turn 2 Bogwater Lumerette into Bleck is very, very strong. And then, of course, if you want to go even bigger, you have Germination Practicum, which is fantastic in this deck as you are looking to play a bunch of creatures. Putting 2 counters on your creatures every single turn is obviously very strong. And then, of course, Professor Delianfell. We saw this yesterday. I mean, it's one of the best rares in the entire format. And, of course, it fits right into the Witherbloom strategy.
Yeah, we were talking with Maria, and she said it lets you win games that you had no business winning, and that's exactly how I described that card as well. Okay, let's get back to the action here and see if Nathan can pick up some of these cards. And what I'm really paying attention to here, Paul, as that was pick 7, is are we going to see those Pest Mascots come back on the wheel? It looks like he's going to pick up a Send in the Pest for his 8th pick here.
And that works really well with, of course, just the life gain that you want. And I would be surprised if he doesn't get at least one of those, right? 3 Pest Mascots. I mean, unless somebody's just aggressively taking them and looking to just go all in on the life gain, pump your creature strategy.
5 seconds.
Let's follow the Lumerettes here. It's nice, you know, if you can't gain the life, it's kind of mediocre. But of course, in the Witherbloom strategy, if you can get 2 cards out of this, it is pretty strong.
Pick up the pack. You have 10 seconds.
Ooh.
Okay, so this was the pack that had the Mindful Biomancer, Colonian Tackle, and
5 seconds.
Pest Mascot, notably.
And it's
so
not
the
here.
Pest Mascot did not table, so that means there's at least one
Draft.
other Witherbloom player,
out
most
4 cards
likely,
to your left.
on the table.
I guess we'll know in this because this one
Pick up
also
the
had
pack.
one.
You have 5
Right.
seconds.
And it's gone. So
Yeah,
that
okay.
means that you are fighting. I have to say, that is a rough spot
Draft.
to be if
Lay
you're
out
in
3 cards to
the
your left.
probably weakest archetype and you're also scrapping it out with somebody.
pack.
But
Right.
it's the
5
Pro
seconds.
Tour. It's not easy.
Yeah. Now, I will say it did feel like Witherbloom was reasonably open from the right
Draft.
side. So if there's somebody
Lay out
in
2 cards
the
to
color
your left.
combination, it's very likely
pack.
that they're probably
select a
somewhere on the
card,
other
5
side of the
seconds.
table.
Pass the final card.
Okay, last few cards here. Well,
Very good.
Nathan
About to
seems
start
to
the
have,
review period. You'll have
planted his
60
flag.
seconds.
Yeah, I
At
mean,
the end
at
of the
this point,
sentence.
it's
Afterwards,
very, very
please return your
difficult to
cards
kind of
to your
pivot
single face down pile.
out of this. You're simply
to
just
get-
not going to have enough playable cards. Nathan has an even mix of green and black cards, meaning if you do pivot into something like Silver Quill or Quandrix, I mean, you're gonna only have 4 cards out of pack 1.
yeah, and it gets extra rough too because I feel like the version of Witherbloom that is the most desirable is actually this low to the ground aggressive one. It's not super well suited for it, but a lot of the cards that you get are kind of free and you
Right.
can wheel them. And again, the problem is that makes pivoting that much harder because you have a bunch of cards that are built towards that strategy. And if you wanted to go into Quandrix, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
That deck doesn't want any of those cards.
And for those of you wondering why there are a couple of cards that are sleeved up here, one of the packs had a slight mark on them. So what they decided to do is sleeve up that entire pack for the draft. There are no double-faced bonus sheet cards that exist in this format, but that was kind of the solution that they had because they register all the cards, every single pack, every
Please
single
return your
card,
cards to the
and
single
so
face down
the
pile.
judges know exactly what's in all the cards, of course, so
up the pack
there's no
labeled
foul play, so they decided to keep the pack, but sleeve everything up just so you
Remove
don't
the
know
cards and
about
lay
the
out
markings.
14 cards face down, remembering that one of them is going to be facing the opposite
All
direction.
right. Pack 2, pick 1 for Nathan Steuer. A reasonable start to his draft, but you know, one of the knocks on Witherbloom is that you are very much at the mercy of the packs. If you get a bunch of uncommons and rares, totally fine deck. You can win games with it, no problem. If you don't, it suffers.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
So he's going to be really hoping to find
Very
a
good.
bunch of on-color,
Pick up the pack. You have
ideally
40
gold
seconds.
cards here. Let's see what he gets. Oh, there's Bletch right off the top.
Well, yeah, that one is going to be a slam dunk first pick here for Nathan Steuer. Going to be very, very happy about that. Take a look at 3 mana for a 3/4.
my God, another
tons of
Pest
ways.
Mascot.
Yeah, tons of ways to gain life in this deck. I mean, like I mentioned before, the ideal curve is turn 2 send in the pest or turn 2 Bogwater Lumerate into Blex so that you can just trigger the +1/+1 counters immediately.
Blech. I think that's how it's pronounced where Black is from.
Fair enough.
But we don't have
5
to do
seconds.
the whole. And I guess the dream of wheeling that Pest Mascot is probably
Draft.
not there for Steuer,
Shuffle
given
and lay
that
out
he
13
shipped
Yeah.
3 of them. And
cards.
The
Right.
thing is, I don't even know how strong the Pest Mascot is, even if you're doing the Witherbloom thing. I think it's a fine card, but there's just so many cards that I would rather have. The interactive spells that you
up the pack.
mentioned,
35
Bogwater
seconds.
Lumerates. There's a lot of cards I would take over that card, but yes.
there's a Lumerate there.
there is-
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about wheeling it, right?
Right,
Pick it
yeah,
up
but there were
9th or
3
10th.
in the first pack, so you kind of have to assume when you don't wheel any of them, I mean, there's a chance there might even be a 3rd there, I say, Witherbloom draft.
Oh, goodness sakes. We'll hope for Nathan that that's not the case. Interesting choice here, a Bogwater Lumerate or a Leech Collector. He has quite a few payoffs for life gain and not that much life gain.
Right, and you know the Lumerate's not going to table based on what you've
5
seen.
seconds.
You have to take the Lumerate here.
He needs to balance out life gain
Draft.
with payoffs.
That's
Shuffle
right.
and
If
lay
you
out
end up with
12
all
cards
payoffs
to
and
your
no
right.
life gain, those decks are not
Yeah,
good.
these cards need to work synergistically together. It's kind of like when you draft the Silver Quill deck. You can't just draft all creatures.
Pick up the pack.
You need to make
You
sure
have
that you
30
have enough
seconds.
spells to be able to trigger your repartee. And same thing with the Witherbloom decks. You need a bunch of life gain cards and then a bunch of life gain payoff cards.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why Silver Quill has been more successful generally, is that there's quite a few cards that include a way to trigger repartee without really asking you to do much. You know, prepare cards and stuff like that, just have it kind of tacked
Right.
on, where it does feel like
5
a little bit
seconds.
of a struggle to get the life gain rolling in Witherbloom.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Eternal Student, just
Draft.
a generically good card.
Shuffle and lay out
So this is
11
just something that you're
cards
happy
to your
kind of
right.
playing in the 4-mana slot. Trade with something, and then all of a sudden you just get a couple of 1/1 flyers.
Yeah, there was a Shopkeeper's Bane in there, which would also go quite well in
Pick up the pack.
Nathan's
You have
current
25
list, but he
seconds.
went for the uncommon instead. I think I would have gone for the Bane. It gives you an attacker and a life gain trigger, which he really does need. Melancholic Poet, well, it's not the most natural way to do it, but that is also a source of life gain.
That is a source of life gain, but there are much less prepared creatures that you can have in
5
the
seconds.
Witherbloom strategy. So oftentimes you're only going to have, maybe 5 or 6 ways to
Draft.
actually trigger it a lot of the time. So
Shuffle
Nathan
and lay out
actually going
10
for,
cards.
well, it says life gain on it.
Another
right?
payoff.
It says infusion, there's a life gain payoff. Now, if you can gain life and then use this as a combat trick, it can lead to some blowouts.
Pick up the pack. You have 25 seconds.
Okay, there's a Noxious Newt.
Yes. Is there any...
There's a Forum Necroscribe if Nathan feels like he needs something at the top end of the mana curve. Did pick up that Lumeret's Favor as a way to trigger it. But the Noxious Newt is just a nice 2-mana play.
5
Works well
seconds.
with that knockout maneuver that he picked up as well.
Yep, he's going to go for the
Draft.
Newt
Shuffle and lay
Solid
out
start
9
here.
cards to your right.
to pack 2. A
Yes.
big highlight at the beginning
Right.
with Bletch and then the Bogwater
Pack.
Lumeret. Those were
You have
really
20
solid pickups. The rest, fine.
Yeah, just look. Yeah, it's not the fanciest deck here right now. It's just, hey, I'm drafting a nice deck with a nice mana curve. I have some synergies. I'm going to lean into it. Have everybody
5
else try to go over the top of each other, take each other's expensive converge spells, and maybe I can just go underneath them with all these 2
Draft.
drops.
He's going to go
Shuffle
for
and lay out 8
Infirmary
cards
Healer
to your
over
right.
Pull from the Grave here.
Yep.
This is a source of life gain, or at least it can be, and
up
it's
the
a
pack. You have 20
well-statted
seconds.
curve-out style creature, though he would really like 1 Pull from the Grave in this deck.
Right. But, another card that can kind of fill a similar role is a card like Follow the Lumerets, right?
Uh-huh.
If you're playing a deck that has access to a lot of life gain, that can be a natural 2-for-1
5
type
seconds.
effect that lets you get some other cards.
Yeah, that's an
Draft.
if at this point for Steuer.
Shuffle
He
and lay out
does have
7
some life
cards
gain,
to
but
your
I think
right.
he'd like to have a bit more here.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue with Witherbloom in general,
Pick up a
especially
pack.
if you're
You
kind
have
of in a
15
contested lane.
seconds.
Oftentimes, you just don't have enough of the, life gain cards or payoffs, and that balance is difficult because you're also trying to find removal spells to put into
5
your deck,
seconds.
and so just it's kind of that you're doing this delicate dance the entire draft.
Picks up an Old Growth Educator here. Pretty late. That's a nice pickup.
Lay out
Yeah,
6
absolutely. I
cards
mean,
to your right.
especially if you, and this is why I mentioned before how important the Bogwater Lumeret is in this deck, because you have that in
Pack,
play,
you
it
have
turns
10
everything on,
seconds.
right? You play that Old Growth Educator, you can use that you
5
can
seconds.
play that as a 6/6.
All right, this is his wheel card, and he did wheel a
Draft.
Mindful Biomancer. Not the most
out 5
exciting, but
cards
it
to
is
your right.
playable in his deck. It is
the
also
pack.
yet
You have
another
10 seconds.
source of life gain.
Okay, and
Oh, and the
there's-
Leech Collector.
There's a Leech Collector, and again, no
Sweet.
pest.
5
There's
seconds.
somebody with like 5 pest mascots in their
No
deck. 'Cause
kidding.
We haven't seen any of them wheel.
Drafts. Lay out 4 cards to your right.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at how the archetypes play out in
Pick up
big
the pack.
picture in a
You have
booster
5
draft
seconds.
when there's really only 5. Oh, sweet. He wheeled the Shopkeeper's Bane, too. Hey, this
Draft.
is actually, given that he knows he's
Pass
fighting
3 cards
somebody
to your
else for
right.
these cards, this is pretty
Pick up the pack.
decent.
You
Yeah,
have
yeah,
5
it's
seconds.
coming
Leech
together well.
Collector?
He's got tons of 2-mana and 3-mana plays. He's got some tricks. I think
Draft.
Nathan would love to pick up a
Pass
few
2 cards
interactive
to your
spells.
right.
He's pretty
Pick up the
light on
pack.
that.
You have 5
Yeah, you're
seconds.
right.
He got a couple in pack number 1, but I don't think he got a single
No.
interactive spell in pack
Draft,
number
please
2.
pass
Yeah,
over
he
the
needs
final
another
card.
grapple with
Add
death
it
and
to your
a
pile.
last
We're now going
gasp.
to begin
right?
the second review period. Same rules as before. You have 90 seconds.
Okay,
Please
pack
begin.
2 in the book. So Nathan is now going to go to his review period. We talked about this yesterday, but if you haven't seen a Pro Tour level draft before, they are called, as you can tell. And that means that you do not get to look at your cards between packs. And instead, you have a timed period here in between each pack where you can look. And the whole point of this is to try to figure out, where am I at? What do I need? How does my curve look? How many creatures do I have? How desperate am I for payoffs, life gain, removal?
Yeah.
Some picks are easy,
Right.
right? You open up a bomb, you don't have to think about it. But when you're crafting a deck during a booster draft, you have to have good mana. You have to have a good curve. You have to have a reasonable
Halfway through,
number of
45
creatures, especially in a deck like this. And then when you're doing the synergy thing, you need life gain payoffs and you need ways to gain life. And then ideally, you'd like a little bit of card advantage woven in there as well. And this is where Nathan gets to start checking boxes. What am I okay with? What do I need?
Yeah, and right now the only thing, you know, he's got kind of the curve part of his deck completely checked. I think that was maybe 6 2-drops, bunch of 3s as well. So, you know, certainly not a clunky deck at all. I think Nathan just needs to find maybe a couple of removal spells and then perhaps maybe 1 or 2 top-end cards, right? Just because he certainly has the luxury of being able to take them just because he's only got that Old Growth Troll and a Songwriter, a Shade Rider? Oh, and there was
The Old
also,
Growth Educator, yeah.
yeah, and then he's also got that Eternal Student, but he actually has not put that card into the mix of cards that I think he wants to see in his deck.
Okay.
Please open the pack labeled.
Okay, pack
Count
3.
14 cards
I would
face
call
down.
this a
Only the one
solid
of them is
draft,
going to be
though,
facing the
so
other way.
far for Steuer. Remember, we're at the PT. Like, a lot of times these drafts look real scrappy. You know, kind of got to put in some fringe playables. And this looks much more like a normal draft where, I mean, he's kind of good on playables almost already. He gets to really kind of pick whatever he wants
Yeah, I think,
going forward.
right. I think Nathan has
Looks like
a
everyone's
solid deck here. The only thing
Pick up
is,
the
I
pack.
think just the
You have 40
overall
seconds.
power level is a little bit on the lower
Yes,
side.
It is. But also he's drafting Witherbloom. So
Right. Wow, this has...
Holy smokes.
He literally
Did
just
he
opened
whiff?
nothing. I mean, there's one green card in the entire pack.
It's that or Mage Referee?
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing here. You can... Wow. This pack has... this is not the pack that you want to open here.
This has to
at
be one of the
8-0.
worst packs I think I've ever seen somebody open pack 3.
Yeah,
Five
Like,
seconds.
This-
relative to their
you
deck.
can just take maybe you just defensively draft some. You just take a card from somebody else, maybe.
Draft.
Just because there's literally nothing you would ever play in your deck in that pack.
Shuffle
Wow.
and lay out 13 cards to your
That
left.
is rough for
Yeah.
Nathan Steuer. He opened up one of the better cards for his archetype in pack 2, but this time it is an actual whiff.
Right. He literally first picked
pack
a card that's not
35
going to go
seconds.
into his deck. All right. Last guess.
Hey.
Maybe turning things around. And there's
And a
also
Lewin,
Lewin.
too.
Okay. Both cards very, very strong. Now, Last Gasp, I think, is a card that he might need a little bit more, but Lewin, of course, very, very powerful in the Witherbloom decks.
Yeah, you mentioned that he wouldn't mind a little top end.
Right, so-
And even though Lewin's only 4 mana, it definitely counts as top end.
Absolutely. I've had, opponents play that thing and just make 3 tokens in the same turn.
Right. And
5
they're
seconds.
very relevant in the strategy, not only
Okay.
creating a bigger board state, but
Draft.
also they are all
Shuffle and
pests,
lay
and
out
that's more
12
life
cards
gain
to
trigger.
your
So
left.
he's going to go big, go for the power.
Sure.
I don't think he's going to be happy about passing Last Grasp there, but he got a Lewin.
Yeah. And
Pick up
given
the pack.
how the
You have
draft has
30
been going,
seconds.
there's just no chance that the Lewin's going to table.
Right, exactly. There's a grapple with death.
Okay, yeah. He's absolutely going to be slamming that one here, addressing a need for this deck.
I mean, honestly, 2 needs, right?
Right, yeah.
Removal and it gains a life, so that'll trigger. Not that he's like all in on that strategy, but he does have numerous payoffs. He's
Yeah.
got the 2 leech
5
collectors
seconds.
and
And the Bletch.
Bletch and stuff. So like it is a real thing for him. Although
Draft.
whomever it is at the table that
Shuffle and
has
lay out
the
11 cards to
between
your left.
3 and 5 pest mascots also is the
Right.
one that's really wanting that life gain
Yeah,
too.
definitely.
Pick up the pack. You have 25 seconds.
Ooh, Paradox Surveyor. Okay, so there's an End of Brilliance and a Scathing Shadelock as potential options here. Cost of Brilliance is nice, though. I mean, you're looking at a deck that has
Yeah.
a ton of 2-mana plays.
Yeah.
So if you're curving out, I mean, even if you don't care about the repartee, if you're the aggressor and you're gaining life, losing a life isn't that big of a deal either. So I do
Yeah.
like this pickup here.
And in an aggressive
Draft.
curve, it can finish off the opponent too. So
Shuffle
there's a
and lay
lot
out
to like
10
there about
cards
Cost of
to your left.
Brilliance.
Yeah, I mean, compare this to a card, not too long ago. Combat Tutorial was one
Yes.
of the best commons in Final Fantasy
Pick up the
Limited,
pack.
and this
You
does.
have 25
This is a
seconds.
very, very similar card.
All right, pick number 5 here.
All right, looking at Dissection Practice just as a very nice combat trick here. nothing too great here. I don't think
Right.
this deck is a card deck that cares about multiple copies of Noxious Newt. So dissection practice, just a nice trick. You're curving
5
out.
seconds.
It just makes blocking very, very difficult. And it just randomly has, of course, that little line of text at the
Draft.
top where, you know, you get to
Shuffle and
drain
lay
your
out
opponent for
9
one, and the
cards
life
to
gain
your
could be
left.
very relevant too.
That's right, and the life loss too. You know, these decks really do have the ability to kind of chip away at your life total, both through creature
Pick up the
damage
pack.
and
You
things
have
like
20
that.
seconds.
All right, might take this pest mascot.
Does he get one of the
One of the
6,
5 or 6 that we've
5,
seen.
yeah, that we've seen? I guess he does.
Yeah, interesting. There's 2 really good lore hold cards in this pack. There's
5
a Startled
seconds.
Relic Sloth and a Wilt there, and
Interesting.
typically lore hold is a very contested
Draft.
color pair.
Shuffle and lay out 8 cards to your left. Pick up the pack. You have 20 seconds.
Yeah, Johnny's response. Ooh, a bunch of Quandrix cards there as well. There's a Studious first year, but this deck's not really ramping into anything. I think Titan's Grave just makes a lot more sense in a deck like this.
Yeah, and that's such a nice checkbox to hit too, just to get
5
your
seconds.
mana under you a little bit more. I mean, the first dual land does go a long way. Any opening hand that has it, it's so much
Draft.
easier to hit
Right.
your colors.
Lay out 7 cards to your left.
So great pickup there for Nathan, especially
the
given
pack.
that he
You have
seems
15
completely
seconds.
fine on playables.
Yeah. Now probably you're going to take Adventurous Eater. There's also Glorious Decay, which acts as a very nice sideboard option.
Yeah, he has Pick Your Poison,
5
and if he
seconds.
takes this, he'll have Glorious Decay out of the board as well, so a good suite of sideboard cards.
But Adventurous Eater does allow you to
Lay out 6
gain
cards to your
life
left.
and also move the counters where you like, but it looks like Nathan, you know, Glorious Decay does have a very, very large
the pack.
impact
You have
out of the
10
sideboard
seconds.
if you're playing against a deck where it's good.
Yes. This is the pack that he opened
5
here.
seconds.
10-year concoctor. We were saying he wanted a little bit of a top end.
Draft.
Is this checking that box for you, Paul?
Yeah.
No, this
5
is
cards to
generally
your
not a
left.
card. I'd probably rather play the Shade Rider in the deck, but it's,
Pick
you
up
know,
the
if you're
pack.
playing against
You
a
have
deck with
10
a bunch of
seconds.
removal, maybe you can board it in.
There's another Mindful Biomancer. He's got his fill of
5
those.
seconds.
Oh yeah, there are no shortages
Yes.
of Mindful Biomancer in this deck.
Draft. Lay
Yeah,
out
he
4
has,
cards
I
to your
believe,
left.
3 of those now. But again, if he's thinking along the
the
lines
pack.
of the
You have
curve out
5
aggressive version, yeah, you play him.
I mean, that's absolutely what this deck is looking like here.
And there's that Melancholic
Draft.
Poet as well. I'm curious if
Lay out 3 cards
that
to
will
your
end up
left.
making the cut, given
pack.
that he did
You have
end
5
up
seconds.
finding enough life gain triggers, it feels like.
Wow, Paradox Surveyor with 3 cards left.
What?
Pass 2 cards.
One of the better Quandrix
Pick up the pack. You have
uncommons.
5
That's a
seconds.
crime against my...
Oh, and a very elite,
college.
cheerful Osteomancer, which is
Draft.
certainly not
Look at
a
the final
terrible
card
card
next to your
here.
pool.
Wow.
Thank you for joining us for this draft. We have a few more things to get through. First of which, please stay in your seats with the same secrecy as before. Please review all of your cards and make sure there's a stamp on them.
Okay,
If
players
there's
are going to
not,
finish
please
up
raise
the
your hand so we can
procedures
back
here,
up.
but what do you think, Paul?
You know, I think he was in the right lane, right? It's unfortunate that, of course, there's another Witherbloom drafter at the table, but, you know, I think he was able to kind of put together a nice functional deck. Will note that I do think the general power level of the cards in his deck is a little bit low. He's got tons of commons, which, of course, in a format that's got tons of great rares and uncommons, you're kind of going to put yourself a little bit behind if you run into some of the more powerful decks. But I think, you know, given the fact that this deck has a really nice curve, you can draw the Bleck, and you do have some interaction, I think, you know, going into this, I would probably predict something like a 2-1 for a deck like this.
Yeah, which is really good. I mean, honestly, especially for a player of Nathan's caliber, this to me, I would check this box. Like, if I were Nathan, I would not mulligan this deck, which is kind of saying a lot. But you have to really remember how many times you are just
So a couple of things.
fighting
Already
people at the
joining
table
the rest
just to
of
get
the
anything resembling a good deck, and you have to play a bunch of fringe playables or maybe a color you weren't really planning on, and that's from the top players. I mean, this is not like you made a mistake. This is you did everything you could and you still came up short. This deck, he's flooded on playables. I mean, he gets to pick out basically, do I want to have a more aggressive version, a more mid-range version, or a more slower, you know, value-based version. Let's see what he actually put together here, because well, we get to answer that question right now.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's going for the more aggressive version.
And I don't think he has a decorum.
Is that a decorum discert? Yeah, that.
I don't think he's got that
believe
one in his
so.
deck because I don't remember seeing. We would have remembered that one.
Yes.
Right? But
no, he does. He must
Okay.
have picked it up late in the pack.
wow. All right. Well, you know, nice top end card there. We did not see it, but one of the best cards in his deck. But you know, again, if Nathan comes out with that aggressive start, he does have, I almost forgot, he does have an Ambitious Augmenter, which is an amazing aggressive creature. We have the Black, and we have the Decorum Dissertation, which I really like in aggressive decks. I've tried playing it in control decks, and well, I just, you know, I play against an aggro deck and I just can't cast a spell. But here, it is absolutely amazing. You have the life gain. So, I mean, given that he had that, and we didn't see that before, and taking a look at the curve, yeah, this deck looks very nice. I mean, this is far from some of the train wrecks that we've seen previously.
Absolutely. And by the way, triple Mindful Biomancer. So he is going full on aggression here, trying to get this job done. He's going to use that dissertation as a finisher. I mean, he's going to be pointing at his opponent a lot, I think. All right, there is the deck from Nathan Steuer. Draft is in the books. We're going to take a short break here from Las Vegas. When we come back, we will have a round with Nathan Steuer and Jack Potter. Don't go anywhere.